Hi, I'm Chike Coleman from The Wheelchair Watcher. This is Chuck Koplinski from the Illinois Times, and this is Real Reviews of the Cinematic Underground, the show where we talk about movies that come out during the week on video and DVD and in theaters. And this week, we're going to be talking about two films and then revealing our top 10 of 2014. The first movie that I wanted to talk with you about this week, Chuck, but first of all, how was your vacation?
It was fine. It was fine. Ended up staying a little bit longer than we thought, but got back, had a week to decompress, so yeah, no complaints.
Yeah,
How about you?
I had the same thing. I went to Florida this year, and that's a very interesting thing when it's dead in December and you're in sunny weather. It's out of the box really for me.
It really is, yeah.
I'm not used to that, and don't know whether I really truly like it. But that was my vacation, and then like you, I had a week to decompress, and that was great because we both saw a ton of movies.
Yep.
So this week, I wanted to start things off with one of the most controversial films of 2014, The Interview, directed by Evan Goldberg and Seth Rogen. The Interview centers on a production assistant and a co-host of a show, Dave Skylark. And Dave Skylark is basically the Piers Morgan-ish kind of, well,
yeah, I can see where you're going with that.
Yeah,
but much dumber.
He's a dumber Piers Morgan character who basically, can't say he really gets celebrities to reveal weird, stupid things about themselves.
For some odd reason, he does.
Okay, so he gets celebrities to reveal really strange, odd things about themselves, and that's what sells his show, essentially. And we go from Rob Lowe being bald to
Eminem revealing he's gay. That was the best scene in the film.
I agree. I love that scene so much because he plays it completely straight.
He says, I was leaving like a little gay breadcrumb of clues through my music.
Yeah, like how can you not notice that I'm gay?
That was very funny.
And then directly quoting him through his own lyrics. He's like, yes, that's me saying it. And that was wonderful. And all of a sudden, we find out that Kim Jong-un is a fan of Dave Skylark's show and wants to be interviewed. And so the Rogen's like, holy crap, people have been insulting the show we do for years. This may be our first chance to do some real news. We need to take this. Dave Skylark agrees, and they party, and then all of a sudden they get a knock on the door from a CIA agent who says, we want you to murder the leader of North Korea. Is it North Korea or South Korea?
North Korea.
Okay, good. North Korea.
Finger on the pulse there, good.
Yeah, North Korea, and we want you to do it during this interview. And James Franco's character, Dave Skylark, says, well, crap, okay, sure. And then the fun ensues. What did you think of The Interview? It's gotten all this
well, it certainly
publicity
wasn't
and press.
A movie that was worth all the stink. That's for sure. It was a very erratic movie. There were times when I was laughing very hard, and then there were times when I was pretty bored. I think it's very up and down, very inconsistent. You know, Rogen has the thankless part of being the straight man throughout.
He always is, though.
And he does a fine job with that, but as I say, it's a thankless role. Other than the Eminem sequence, I have to say, I think I laughed every time Franco opened his mouth. As the dim bulb Skylark, I thought he was the best part of the movie. He was just completely into the character. I laughed repeatedly at him. But as far as it having anything really important to say in a political sense, there's really nothing there. Nothing. It's a very simple message. Nothing surprising by any stretch. And as I say, really not worth all the stink that blew up around it.
In my opinion, the thing that made the movie funny is something similar to what you said. The conversations.
Yes.
The conversations are what gave me all of the laughs in this film. The physical comedy to me was completely meaningless.
Yeah, I did.
I feel like, I explained this earlier pre-show before you got here, but I say it this way. When they came up with the concept for what The Interview should be, like, oh crap, man, what do you think would be a great idea for a movie for us to do together? Because we haven't done one in a while. And they said, well, why don't we do an interview with Kim Jong-un? And then they said, well, I don't really know what to do after that. What are we going to do to make it funny? And then they smoked some weed, and then they got a dartboard together and said, okay, every time we get a good score, we have to come up with an idea for what would be funny to do in this movie. And I feel like that's what they did. Well, wouldn't it be funny to put a probe up your butt so that, you got the chemical that would help kill Kim Jong-un? Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't it be great if you had an affair with this chick in this movie because she's hot and because you're a slob and a slouch? And that's what it felt like to me for the physical comedy. I don't know. Did you have the same feeling?
Yeah, the physical comedy didn't work. But as you say, the conversations where Rogan is attempting to have an intelligent conversation, and Franco, of course, snaps back with something completely, that he completely obviously misunderstands what he's talking about. The conversations were good. But yeah, the movie's a good 20, 25 minutes too long because obviously they don't have much of a story there, and they just keep kind of padding it. Still, a significant film as far as film history is concerned.
Didn't it make $33 million on demand?
I don't know what the final total was on demand, but as I say, that's going to be significant because the studios have been wanting to do that for ages, taking a major release film and releasing it on video on demand the same day as a release in the theaters. And through these circumstances, they finally got to do it. So it was an interesting litmus test, and we'll see if this is followed up by something else. I'm sure it will be at some point. Yeah, but I guess, the story behind all of this is much more interesting than the film itself.
How do you think that that's going to affect theater viewing? Is that going to bring theater viewing down?
Well, we'll have to wait and see. I really think Sony screwed over the theaters. I mean, the theaters, the independent theaters like the Art, they formed a coalition and said, yeah, we'll show your film. Sony agreed to that. Other major chains then jumped on when they saw that. So they get the movie booked, and then after the movie's booked, they announce, oh yeah, and then we're going to release it on video the same day, and you can see it for $6. I think they screwed over the theaters completely.
I completely agree with you there.
I don't know if they're engendering any goodwill as far as that's concerned, and if they come knocking on their door again and say, hey, we're going to release this on cable in the same day as it's in theaters, I don't think the reception is going to be great.
No, I don't think so either. The next film I wanted to talk about today is one that I had a really hard time with. I even called you last night because I was just like, I don't know if I can make it through this film. And it's a fantastic film. I want to say that straight off. This film is Selma, directed by Ava DuVernay, starring
David Oyelowo.
David Oyelowo.
Mm-hmm. English actor.
He's an English actor. He's been in MI5/Spooks. He's been in The Butler, directed by Lee Daniels. And fun, interesting fact, Lee Daniels was originally slated to direct Selma as a picture, and then something happened where he couldn't do it. Is that the understanding?
I didn't know. Yeah, there's something happened, a scheduling thing or a vision thing. But this young lady who they got to bring in to do it does an exceptional job.
She really does. And the film surrounds Dr. King's time in Selma, Alabama, to help African-American people get the right to vote from both the president and basically convincing the townspeople to let African-Americans, who are over 50% of the population at this point in Selma, Alabama, to get the right to vote so that they can not only vote but be part of juries and serve jury duty, so that, when justices are done, there's an equal balance of people who can see justice done. David Oyelowo is a great portrayer of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. I say this to say he's not at all why I like the film. I like the film because of every member of the supporting cast. They, to me, really sell the atmosphere of Selma, all the racism and bigotry that occurs. They tell me all about what it's like to live in that time, and that to me is the most fascinating part of the film, and to me the most rewarding part of the film. Thank you. And there are some very dark, horrible things that happen in this movie, and they happen in this movie because they happen in real life. I think it's the courage of the director not to shy away and just show news clippings of the things that happen, and instead try to depict it in real time in the movie. I really think that people back then, and even in some circumstances today, tend to judge based on what they see. For instance, usually when people see me, they're used to very much seeing me driving around in my wheelchair, in either an electric or a manual wheelchair, and that's the perception that they see of me. They see me moving and observing the world in a way that's different than most, and the reason I'm sitting in this chair today is to not to prove that things are not always as they seem, but to prove that there are many different ways to observe and value the world. And the people of Selma, Alabama did the very same thing, but they did it remarkably in a peaceful way, without getting violent, without cursing, without doing anything in terms to fight back. They just wanted a basic human right. And that's something we've seen come around again when we're talking about rights of people who are gay or homosexual or transgender. They too had to fight in a peaceful way to see their rights come to fruition. And it's just sad that all that blood had to be spilled in order for that goal to be realized. Chuck, what did you think of Selma?
A really good film, really, really good film, and for all the reasons you mentioned. One of the things I liked about it was that it gave you a more complete picture of King than we've ever seen in a film before. I mean, we see him as this great oratorical speaker. We see him as this leader with charisma who's able to rally these people around him. But also in this film, we see him as a man. We see him as a man who makes mistakes along the way. We see him as a man who doubts whether he's doing the right thing. We see him as a man who worries about the safety of himself and his family. And getting that more complete picture, I think, is vital to this film because it makes what he does that much more remarkable. You've got to make these heroes seem human so we can relate to them, and in seeing them then overcome these human frailties or these human concerns makes them that much more heroic. And that's one of the reasons, that's I think the main reason why I liked the film was this more complete vision of him.
One of the things that you mentioned, the complete vision of him, there is a scene where King has what he appears to see as the goal and reward for his efforts being realized, but he turns it away. And when he turns it away, I understand immediately why. He doesn't trust the idea that what is being offered to him is not a farce or a trap of some kind. And that moment was one of the real rewarding moments for me in the film because you see him make judgment calls and be unpopular.
Right, yeah, and he starts to question himself. Did I do the right thing? Did I, so yeah.
Yeah. And another scene that I really love is the one between Dr. King's wife and Malcolm X.
Yes, early on.
And the portrayal of Malcolm X, I have to say, is fantastic.
Yeah, he's got one scene, but he
really
drives it home.
And I really love the conversation with Coretta King and Malcolm X talking about, well, what way do you think I can approach this to further aid the cause? And he's not trying to call King out as
not trying to undercut him
as anything more than a human being who wants to get things done, and he really truly does want to help the movement. And I love that.
Another early scene, Oprah Winfrey was one of the producers.
Oh, yes.
And
she's never
one of my favorite performers because I think she overacts, but here she's got a wonderful scene at the opening. I think the woman was a school teacher, and she goes to try and register to vote, and she's denied. She's asked impossible questions that no one could answer.
It's not even that she's denied. It's the questions, while you know she's going to be denied, that really destroy things. I remember one of the questions was, how many people serve on a district court? And the answer was like 64. And then the person said, name them. And at that moment, you knew that she couldn't. You knew that would be an impossible ask to just pull off the top of your head. and to that, like you said, horribly, maliciously painful scene to watch, to see somebody degraded so far down. But I love the film. We love the film for different reasons.
Well, yeah, and Oscar nominations come out this Thursday. It's going to be interesting to see how it's received.
Do you think? I do want to give one positive to David Oyelowo, and that is his speeches.
Mm-hmm.
He gets the cadence correct. He gets the emotion of the moment correct. He doesn't overplay it, and I really enjoyed that. So I think we're both pretty positive on the film.
Yeah,
Would you recommend it?
Completely.
I know that's tough because there are some people who are going to be sensitive.
Well, look, if you don't know what the movie is about, then you're not paying attention. I mean, come on. And I think 12 Years a Slave was much more difficult to sit through. I do know that Rotten Tomatoes, the website that pulls together averages of critics' reviews, as of yesterday, I think 115 reviews had been submitted, and everyone was positive. So it was 100%, which is very rare.
Wow. Just astounding. Well, now, since we've finished talking about Selma, let's get to our top 10 of 2014.
Mm-hmm.
Chuck, do you want to go?
Doesn't matter to me. I'm following your lead,
The
man.
entire list, or you want to go one by one? I say we should go one by one to give us our chance to explain each film.
Okay.
So what's your number 10?
Captain America, The Winter Soldier. I think it was much more than a superhero film. I think that it was very rare that movies this year talked exactly about what was going on in the world around us, as far as the paranoia that struck us with terrorism, as far as the steps that government takes to combat that, as far as the compromises that we have to make in order to do that, and also the era of modern warfare, I think, is predicted or portrayed very accurately here as far as our notion of wiping people out before they do anything to us as a preemptive strike. All these issues were at play in this film. It has so much subtext, and there's so much more going on than just superheroics, and that's one of the reasons why I loved it on my top 10 list.
Okay. My number 10 is the only documentary on my list, and that is Life Itself. We've talked at great length about Life Itself and the work of Roger Ebert. I found this film particularly moving because we got to see what he went through, not goes through, in terms of cancer and how that played a part in his life. Not only that, but we got to see little pieces of how he really became a film critic and how he became known to the world as the world's leading film critic, and how that really might have had an effect on him, especially from people as influential in his life as his wife, and friends who have known him from the University of Illinois here in Champaign-Urbana. And we saw the negatives of the man, which either not a lot of people knew about or were aware of but did not talk about. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was an interesting thing. Like you said, putting human reality to a person who is so large in life. So I did love Life Itself, and that's my number 10. Your number 9?
Gone Girl was my number 9. David Fincher's adaptation of Gillian Flynn's novel. Much more than a murder mystery here. Great deal going on as far as identity is concerned, how we perceive people, the image we put forth of ourselves that perhaps hides the true nature of ourselves, and also the nature of marriage and other relationships and how we interact with those people who are supposed to know us best, but the secrets that we have to keep and hide in order to function in that relationship. A great many layers, especially as far as identity are concerned, are in this movie, and I found it intriguing from beginning to end. It's a 2.5-hour movie, and it just flies by. It does not feel that long at all. And one that, even though you know how it turns out, I think you can go back and watch more than once to pick up all the clues that we have along the way concerning identity and the shifting way in which we see the Ben Affleck character.
My number 9 is The Raid 2 Barandal. I loved The Raid when The Raid 2 came out, and it proved to be a much more deeply involved story. The action was much better pace, and it came fast and furious and often. I really love these characters, and I loved the way the story slowly drew you in. And even when the story didn't draw you in, the action was there to be a follow-up. And I really loved that about the film. So that's my number 9. Your number 8?
Begin Again is my number 8. The drama, musical, comedy kind of, with Keira Knightley and Mark Ruffalo about two lonely souls in New York who connect through music and end up resurrecting their lives in different ways. I love the connections between these characters. Great supporting cast with Catherine Keener and Haley Stanfield as Ruffalo's wife and daughter. Also Adam Levine, is that the guy's name?
That's correct.
As the pop singer who leaves Keira Knightley. What the hell are you thinking? And the music was great as well. This movie just made me smile throughout the entire thing. And that's one of the reasons I loved it, but one that keeps me thinking as well.
That surprisingly is also my number 8. I really just love the connection between Knightley and Ruffalo, and I even like the Ruffalo and Steinfeld scenes a lot.
You see them grow.
And the music was just fantastic. And it gave me hope that Keira Knightley can not only pull off good performances, but maybe something that might be someday Oscar-worthy.
She proved this year she can do anything.
She really did.
Because she's got 2 movies on my top 10. I mean, she can do anything.
Okay. Having said that, I'm very curious about what your number 7 is.
My number 7 is The Imitation Game. The Benedict Cumberbatch film with Keira Knightley as well, in which he plays Alan Turing, who's considered the father of the modern computer. He and some other mathematicians and physicists were charged with breaking the Nazis' Enigma code during World War II. It takes them 2 years to do it, but when they finally do it, it ends up being worth all the sacrifice. But what's interesting about this movie is that we deal with that period in Turing's life, but also his past when we see him at a prep school, a young man growing up, and also afterwards, after World War II, when we see what the issues he has to deal with. He was a homosexual in a time in which it was illegal to be dubbed that in England, and the persecution he faces is awful. The Imitation Game refers to so many things. It refers to the imitation language they're trying to break, but also more importantly, the imitation life he has to lead because he cannot be himself in this society. Engrossing, tragic, well acted, really like that film.
My number 7 is the Lego Movie. I absolutely had no expectations of actually liking this movie until I saw the trailer, and I was like, I have to go see that because I feel like this is not just a simple kids movie, and boy was I right. It talks about the idea of conformity, the idea of acceptance, the idea of not having to be the same thing all the time, that you can be different and that differences are unique and they're to be celebrated, and that you can be an adult and still be a kid a bit.
And that's important.
And that's important, that you still retain the innocence of what life can bring you in terms of joy.
And the imagination.
And imagination and being creative. And I think that's exactly, if the creator of Lego saw this movie, which I don't know whether he's
dead,
passed or not.
Long time.
But if he had seen this movie, I'm sure he would be very proud of what directors Phil Lord and Chris Miller portrayed in this film. Just fantastic.
And those two guys made the best comedy of the year, in my opinion, 22 Jump Street.
I would agree with you on that. Your number 6.
The Babadook, the Australian horror film about a single mother and her young child threatened by a monster in the boy's room. Yes, there is something under his bed, and how they have to combat that. The monster actually represents the woman's rage, her grief, her sense of not wanting her son around because she resents him because her husband was killed, taking her to the hospital the day in which the boy was born. A lot of subtext here, but also just incredibly creepy in a very simple way, just to use a very simple use of special effects, lighting, sound, gives you a completely unnerving film. Low budget, but so effective. Check this one out, search it out. I know it is on pay-per-view at the moment.
My number 6, actually, I'm going to preface this. My number 6 and number 5 star the same person.
Okay.
My number 6 is Enemy. I was so deeply engrossed in the idea that Jake Gyllenhaal's character could be two people and that those two people could lead two separate lives. But I've been even more agape by not just the ending, but the explanations of why that is. The possibilities of why that is and what that means. Jake Gyllenhaal gives a turn that shocks even me, that can't even be called a bravura performance. It's just a performance that defies any expectation of what you would expect to see from any actor.
He could be our best American film actor right now. No one takes chances like he does.
Really, no one does. No. And I think that there's such a beauty in the film and a fragility in the film in the way that he portrays both men and what that means throughout the film, and not just throughout the film, but at the end, when all the clues add up to the most shocking thing I think I've seen in theaters this year.
The most frightening ending I've seen. That shocked me too. Number 5 on my list is Calvary, the great film with Brendan Gleeson about the Irish priest who has a week to live when he's threatened by one of his clergy people with death, and he has to put his house in order and begins to doubt everything that he's done for the people in his flock. Great performance, and really gets you thinking about the purpose or validity of religion in a modern world.
My number 5 is Nightcrawler. Again, another performance by Jake Gyllenhaal this year that just, I don't know how he does it.
It's creepy.
he manages, by some stretch of the imagination, to equal his performance in Enemy, and dare I say even surpass it, by being a videographer for crime scenes, and not just being that videographer, but even taking matters into his own hands.
Mm-hmm. Staging things, making things look a certain way, and it's just astounding. Lost 35 pounds for that film, as if he needed to. He has the appearance of a lizard throughout. I kept thinking, yeah, you're just as cold-blooded as a lizard.
Yeah, very much so. And that's a movie that we'll probably review on this show next week.
After nominations come out.
Number 4
for me was Ida, the Polish film about the young woman who's about to become a nun, only to be found, or only to be told that she is in fact Jewish, having been put in this convent by her parents during World War II. To protect her. Her and her aunt go on a search then to find out what happened to her parents, and the revelations we get along the way really shake both of them to their core and make them reevaluate their life. Haunting film, shot in black and white. This one grabs you and doesn't let you go long after it's over.
My number 4 is Calvary. For all the same reasons that you said, I really feel that this is a movie that just gives Brendan Gleeson a chance to shine. Not only that, but the townspeople that he has to interact with, and you're piecing together who might want to actually possibly kill him, with no real hints, I don't think, as to who the actual person could be. Your laser focus goes from one person to the next person to the next person to the next person, and there really is no let up. And I think that's what I love most about this film, because not only do you see those relationships, but you also see the relationship with his daughter. And that plays a very key role in the film as well. And that's why I really love Calvary. Your number 3.
Wild, with Reese Witherspoon, adaptation of the Cheryl Strayed memoir about a young woman who goes on an 1,100-mile trek in order to reevaluate her life and pull her life together. A movie that surprised me again and again, and ended up being an incredibly moving experience as you see this woman come to terms with mistakes that she's made in her past. Reese Witherspoon, after you see this, you're not going to look at her in the same way, and that's one of the purposes of the film, to redo her image a bit. Great performance, great movie.
Number 3 for me is Ida. I saw this. I don't know if you saw this at a screen. Did you see this at a screen?
I saw it in Chicago.
I saw it at a screening for the Art Theater, and this was one of those films that just, like you said, held on to me and didn't let me go. The personalities of the two main characters who we're following are just so starkly different, and you think, how can they really be family? Because she doesn't really show this person, this new person in her life, any love at all.
Right.
And
But
then
we find out why.
But you find out why, and you see how shockingly similar they are, especially after an event that occurs in the film that just changes the whole dynamic of how the film works and what you're looking to get from it, I suppose. What's your number 2?
Whiplash is my number 2, the incredible low-budget film with Miles Teller and J.K. Simmons as student and Nazi music teacher. It really shows you about the sacrifices you have to make when you want to be great at anything, and I think it calls on the carpet the national attitude so many of us have of just settling for what might be there or just an effort. Great performances by both, great music by both. One of the great endings of a movie I've ever seen.
Number 2 for me is Boyhood. Boyhood is one of those pictures that you're only going to see once in a lifetime, in the sense that filmmaking at this level is just not done. Richard Linklater, the director of Boyhood, took 12 years of his life, or more specifically, 12 weeks of 12 years in his life, to film the progression and the growth of a young boy to when he becomes a man. And there's no sickly sweet ending here. It's the journey's just going to continue. And by the end of the film, you don't want it to stop.
I agree. That's my number 1 film, Boyhood, and I actually watched it again this week with my wife, and let me tell you, even on a second viewing, it holds up and proves moving. And I think this is a movie you go back to like perhaps every 5 years, because as you change, I think you will see and react to it differently. This is one for the ages.
For me, my number 1, you would think...
Whiplash.
No, it's not Whiplash. I love Whiplash. If I had a second, an 11, it'd probably be at number 2. My number 1, Guardians of the Galaxy. For some reason, unknown to me, I love having that space opera type experience at the movies. I love the idea of being completely drawn in to a film and just not wanting to leave the theater. The only film that really made me feel that, especially when you get to the end, is Guardians of the Galaxy. I've only seen the film once, and I know what the saying is. Usually if you see a film 5 times, 12 times, you love that movie. But for me, I only needed to see this once. It's kind of like how fans must have reacted the first time they saw Star Wars. Because you feel for these characters. You want them to go on an incredible journey, and you're going on that journey with them. I didn't even care whether the main character found his father or not. I just wanted that character to have the family he's always wanted. And in meeting the Guardians and being part of that team, he does. And there's a talking tree named Groot that I never thought I would find myself liking. But Groot really is. He's like if Barney, the dinosaur that all kids grew up with, was a mute character who could only say love. If that was Barney's only word, love.
Or Chewbacca as a tree.
Or Chewbacca as a tree. And I really, really think that this movie speaks to people on so many levels. Not just the are we alone in the universe type thing, or the idea of wanting to be a journey and finding yourself, but the idea of just wanting to belong somewhere and be a part of something great. And that, I think, is the reason why we go to the movies. Do you have any honorable mentions?
Nope, not really. Not right now. We need to wrap things up.
My honorable mention, of course, is Whiplash. I love that film to death. I've seen it 5 times. It's a great movie about what it takes to be extraordinary and why, in some cases, finding your way to be that can be paved with thorns or nails or any physical form you want to name, but how that journey can always be worth it if you believe in it enough. And it also is a big middle finger to mediocrity in some ways. And that can be both a good and a bad thing, and the fact that we're even questioning that is what makes that movie so powerful. So until next time, I'm Chike Coleman from The Wheelchair Watcher, and that's Chuck Koplinski from the Illinois Times. You can find our reviews for Chuck at the Illinois Times and for me at wheelchairwatcher.com. We will see you next week, where we will talk about movies that we got to see, but they were out of theaters, so we didn't really get to fully review them and give you our opinions on them. See you then. Bye.